There. I hope you're doing really well today. We are going to look at a comment and an email today. The comment is a question whether insomnia is purely psychological or if there's a physiological component as well. And the email we're going to look at, really good question, much about if you should, really it's about how to avoid checking the time and how to approach that. And it's a really good question there. So I think a lot of value will come from looking at that. So with that said, as always, nothing here is medical advice, just me sharing general advice and tips that I hope will be helpful to anyone that is tuning in. And with that said, let's move to this comment. Sorry, I'm closing a tab here that was open, checking that this is working, everything is good. Okay, so going to YouTube, where are you? Here. And the comment is from Katy, and it is a comment on episode pod number 44, where Katy writes the following. Do you think insomnia is a condition created strictly by the mind, or is there a physiological component to it? And I thought that was a really good question, and I think one that many have. So the short answer we shared here was like, I think the root of it is, of the mind, but that there's definitely a physiological component to it. So with that said, what I mean by that? Well, what first happens when somebody starts having trouble sleeping is that the mind, or part of the mind, that part of our brain that is on the lookout for threats, the part of our brain that's supposed to make sure we're safe, identifies lack of sleep or sleeplessness as a problem. Okay, so that is when it starts. So it starts as it starts in the mind, if you will. But there quickly is, really from the beginning, there's a physiological component as well. So when we have that, when our mind has identified insomnia as a problem, then that leads to hyperarousal, where the kind of nervous system is at like hyperdrive. Sometimes it can be very strong hyperdrive, where you're super anxious, or it can be like almost imperceptible, like you don't even notice it, but it's kind of a little bit on hyperdrive. And what happens with that is we have physiological reactions or symptoms or components, such as palpitations, rapid heartbeat, or muscle twitches, or jerks, or like kind of aches and things like that. And they can further worsen it, because it often feels to people as if their insomnia now has progressed. It has gone from just like a problem of the mind to now I have symptoms. Now it's progressing. It's getting worse. Now I have these twitches and aches and surges of energy and weird things like that. So I think to answer the question there, it starts off in the mind, if you will, but it quickly also has a physiological component that can perpetuate it. So I hope this is helpful to you, Katy, and thanks so much for engaging here. With that said, let's move to an email here. And this is from Justin. Where are we? Here it is. And this came in 2 days ago. And Justin writes the following. Hi, Daniel. I'm seeing a lot of improvement in my sleep quality on my nights off, and I owe that to your help through your YouTube channel and podcast. Thanks again. No, thank you. And I'm super excited to hear that. And for a little bit of context here, Justin works shift work. So nights off, seeing quite a lot of improvement, which is awesome. Okay, one thing I keep struggling with, though, is the urge to look at a clock when I wake up in the middle of the day during my daytime rest periods in my work week. I got rid of my alarm clocks, but my phone is still in the room as I use it for white noise and my alarm. I often wake up an hour or two before the time my alarm is set for. I set my alarm for about 6 hours of rest, and I struggle to fall back asleep sometimes. I lay there wondering what time it might be, how long I have until my alarm goes off, and how long it might take me to fall back asleep. Several times I've resisted the urge to look at the time, and I have eventually fallen back asleep. But sometimes I cave into the temptation to peek at the time. That can cause anxiety when I realize I only have slept 3 or 4 hours. And other times it brings relief to know my alarm was about to go off in the next 10 to 15 minutes. Anyway, and I just get up. I know I need to stop cheating and looking at the clock and just wait for the alarm to go off. But do you see any suggestions for how to write out the anxious thoughts my mind is throwing at me when I'm laying in bed, wondering what time it possibly could be, and observing how long I'm laying awake in bed? Really good question, and I'm surprised that I haven't gotten this question or thought about this myself, because yes, looking at the clock is almost always a bad idea. And Martin Reed, my good friend and colleague, told me one time, he asked me this question, right? I don't know the context, but he said, when did you ever wake up in the middle of the night or day, in your case, Justin, look at the clock and feel like, oh, such a relief? Almost always looking at the clock gives us stress and anxiety, right? But sometimes it can be reassuring knowing that, oh, my alarm was about to go off. And so I totally see that temptation, because it could be that I'm almost, I slept through the night, and that will make me feel good, which then I wrote down a couple of things, but this segued nicely into one of the main thing I felt we should talk about, which was, let's read this again. It can cause anxiety when I realize I've only slept 3 or 4 hours. And other times it brings relief to know my alarm was just to go off. So what brings relief or anxiety is how much you have slept, kind of objectively looking at a clock. So if you have slept, let's say almost 6 hours, you feel good. If you've only slept 3 hours, you feel anxious. And my point here is that it's not how much you've slept necessarily that makes you relieved or anxious. It's the knowledge of how much you've slept, And I see this very often in clinic, that it's not so much, how people feel during the day that makes them relieved or anxious. It's kind of external measures. For example, how much they've slept according to a Fitbit, or with people on CPAP, they get this like a little feedback message on their CPAP machines that tells them how much they slept and if they had leakage and things like that. And if they have a smiley face, feel good. If they have a frowning face, they don't feel good. And it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. If you get a frowning face, you're going to be like, oh, I didn't sleep good. I'm going to feel dragging and hanging today. And if you get the smiley face, you're going to feel good. So just a little bit on that. But I think that is really important. And now, how do you use that information in a practical way? Well, I think this is really important, to shift the attention from how much, the hours, to how you feel. And how can you do that? Well, you can actually keep tab for a while on, keep a sleep diary. And ideally, as you say, Justin, I think a good strategy is just don't look at the clock at all. And we'll come back to what to do when you wake up in a second, but just don't look at the clock at all. That's, of course, a good strategy. But you could also keep a diary and then write down how much you slept, every day. And then also track and write down in the, at the end of the day, it's a little confusing when you're on shift work, but, keep a track of how much is left, and then keep a track at the end of your wake period, and write down how you felt, your mood, how well you focused, how you performed at work, things like that. And soon you will find that there is no clear correlation. Yes, probably most of the time when you slept less, you feel less refreshed and less focused. But there will be many times where you see that was a short night. I didn't sleep that much that night, but I went on to have a pretty good day. And that can really, really be helpful, because then you no longer are, you're no longer fearful of only sleeping 4 hours, because you've seen that may not necessarily lead to me having a bad day. And one thing that I say here, which I think is kind of may sound shocking initially, is that sleeping an X amount of time has no inherent value. It's kind of like money. Having, $200 million itself has no inherent value if you can't trade money for something that brings you happiness, right? So the value of money is that you can trade it for something good. The value of sleep is that it makes you feel refreshed. But that doesn't mean like you need a certain amount on a daily basis to feel refreshed, So again, the importance is not having a certain amount of sleep, but how you feel during the day. And I know you know a lot of this, Justin, but a lot of many things I share here is like just for anybody else that's tuning in, of course. Let's see if I hit on everything. I felt there was something else I wanted to talk about. When they're good, forces you to feel. We talked about that. And yeah. One of the important things here, big picture here, Justin, I'm seeing a lot of improvement in my sleep quality. You right here, which means that even if you wouldn't do anything, just keep doing what you're doing now, you would see more improvement. That's always an important thing. Like, we're always tempted to change things. And I think in this case, Justin, I think this is a very sound thought that you might want to change things to make things better. This type of change seems very good. But generally, even if you didn't do anything, Justin, even if you just like did exactly what you're doing now, trying to avoid looking at the clock, but look at it here and there, and just doing exactly what you're doing, just moving forward, that itself will lead to more and more improvement. Just keep going is often a very, very good strategy. So I think that was it. I think we covered everything. Yeah, let's call it a day. So it's Thursday today. I have I think a really good episode that I'm going to share tonight, which is going to be about how we have to look forward to bedtime, and how sleep hygiene, sticking to all those sleep hygiene tips and check boxes and recommendations, often is really counterproductive. So we're going to talk about that tonight, and I will conclude here. Okay, super nice tuning in, and if you have any comments, please comment. That's literally the lifeblood of this channel. And if you want to drop me an email, Daniel@insomniainsight.co is my email. All right, see you soon. Bye now.